بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So we left off in God's, not God's emissaries, but greater sins. We were talking about heedlessness to be heedless of Allah's punishment and wrath. When we finished that section, and just to kind of recap where we left off, um, we mentioned about how Imam Ali alayhi salam was telling the people to prepare for their last day and to not feel safe from that moment that will be safe, but to live between fear and hope. And he was telling people, it's mentioned, he says, travelers, may Allah have mercy on you. Pack up the provisions for your journey and be prepared. Certainly you have in your path deep ravines and terrible dangers. There's no alternative but to traverse on this path. And he used to say, it's a pity the provisions are small and the journey is very long and the destination is great, as mentioned in Najr Balaga. So when we look at the things we've prepared from this life for the next, we'll find that they could be very small because the journey is so great in the next life. So we have to think about the next life and prepare and be ready for that. And we start with working here for the next life. Then we talked about that some sins will take a person out of walayat and will give over to walayat of shaitan. We mentioned narration where it says, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, if a person slanders a believer to expose the faults of that believer to the public, which happens a lot, unfortunately, he says, or to insult him, Allah expels him from his walayat and leaves him to the walayat of shaitan. So we see that some sins take a person out of the faith when they do them for that moment. When they do tawbah, or do istighfar, seek forgiveness, then they come back. But in the moment they are committing those sins, the faith has left the person. So now we're on the next greater sin, which is the fifth one in this book, which is murder. Author says the fifth greater sin is the murder of that person whose execution has not been ordered by Allah and the Holy Prophet. Traditions which confirm that murder is a greater sin have already been mentioned in the beginning. Moreover, the verses of the Quran clearly mention the divine punishment for the murderers. Surah 4, Ayat 93. And whoever kills a believer intentionally, his punishment is hellfire. He shall abide in it, and Allah will send his wrath on him and curse him and prepare for him a painful chastisement. So we see the person who murders another believer with the intention, not accidentally, but with the clear intention to murder that person. Let's see here, we see that intention plays a big role. So if they do this intentionally, it says their punishment is hellfire and so on as the verse goes. He says 5 types of punishments have been ordained for those who kill the believers. First one, he mentions hell. Second, eternal abode in hell. Third, involvement in divine wrath. Fourth, being accursed by Allah. Fifth, the great chastisement. So all these are mentioned to show how great this sin is, that it shouldn't be taken lightly. Another person's life shouldn't be taken lightly. He says in the next section, one of the beliefs of the Shia Ithna Ashari school of thought is that eternal punishment is only for disbelievers. In other words, if a person dies in belief, he will not remain under punishment forever, even if he has killed a believer or someone else whose killing has been prohibited according to divine command, or even though he has committed other greater sins. So here, it makes us question what is a believer? What is belief? Who is a believer? So when we see this, because it cannot be according to everybody, like all, because we have Muslim and we have believer. We have mentioned in Quran, in Surah Ankabut, that it's saying that, think that you believe and you'll be left alone without being tested. Uh, so we also have other verses about Bedouin Arabs coming and saying that they believe, and they say, the Quran says, don't say that you believe, say that you have submitted. So there's a difference between a Muslim and a mu'min. We see Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, we are those to whom obedience, to whom Allah has made wajib, an obligation. Nothing is proper for the people except to know us, nor are the people absolved from being ignorant about us. He who knows us is a mu'min, a believer, the person who knows them, accepts them. And he who knows us and denies us is kafir. Then these are two groups. The third group is someone who neither knows us or nor denies us. These people are misguided until he returns to the path of guidance, which Allah has made an obligation for him as a binding obedience to us. If he dies in this misguidance, then Allah will do with him whatever he pleases. This narration mentioned in Usul al-Kafi. So we see that people fall in different groups. There are some people who say they are Muslim, but they do not accept Ahlul Bayt, and they adamantly reject Ahlul Bayt, and even make jokes or make fun of Ahlul Bayt. These people, they're Muslim, but they are not mu'min, they're not believer. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, even if I were to hit a believer's nose with my sword, he will not become my enemy. Also, even if I give the whole universe to a munafiq or a hypocrite to make him like me, he will not like me. This is because of Allah's words that were expressed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Ali, no believer will ever become your enemy, and no hypocrite will ever become your friend. This is from Mishkat al-Anwar. We also see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mention, what has happened to some people in my ummah, my community, my nation, they become excited and cheerful, jubilant when they hear the name of Ibrahim alayhi salam and progeny of Ibrahim. But when my progeny are mentioned to them, they hate it, they detest it, they frown at the names of my progeny. By he who sent me as a truthful prophet, if a person dies after performing the deeds of 70 prophets, but he has no liking for the walayat or the authority of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, Allah will not accept any of his obligatory or voluntary acts of worship. This is in Al-Amali from Sheikh al-Suduk. Last one, Prophet says, if everyone in the world loved Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Allah would not have created the hellfire. So we see here, there's a big difference between Iman and being a Muslim or submitting. So we don't believe that, this relief from the hellfire after some time is granted to just anyone from amongst the Muslims. This is reserved especially for believers who have sins, who have committed some sins in their life. Because how could this apply to everyone who professed Islam? People like Muawiyah, people like Yazid, people like Saddam, people like Osama bin Laden, for example, and many others who killed many Muslims, massacred Muslims, and they even killed members of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. For example, as Muawiyah and Yazid, this could not apply to them. So this is for mu'min, not when we say that this is for believers. We have narration that one of the companions asked Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, I have heard you say that all of our Shias will enter Jannah, however sinful they may have been. Imam replied, by Allah, I have truly said, they shall all belong to heaven, to Jannah. The companion said, may my life be sacrificed for you. Even if their sins are great, and they have a lot of them, a large number of them, Imam says, all of you, Shia, will enter Jannah by the intercession of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa or his successors on the day of judgment. But I fear for you the barzakh. He says, what is barzakh? He says, barzakh is the grave. Its duration, its time period starts from the time of death all the way until day of judgment. So he's saying that, okay, eventually, yes, you will be interceded for, but the length might be very long in barzakh. You might be in barzakh for a very long time, undergoing punishment and all sort of things. So don't be arrogant and say, I am a Shia, I'm going to Jannah, they will intercede for me, and be heedless of Allah's punishment, like we talked about in the last chapter. He's saying that he will intercede for you, but I don't know how long this is going to be. This could be very long time. And we would not even want to be in that situation for even a moment. It reminds me of the time when the people came to Imam Ali alayhi salam and wanted to take money from the treasury to use it for their own way because they're related to the Imam. And Imam, the guy felt the fire from the candle. It's just, it's like it hurts. So how can you, you were worried about the worldly fire, which is nothing in comparison to the fire in the hereafter. And this is scaring you and this hurts. Imagine the fire of what you're inviting me to. So we don't want to undergo any of that punishment at all. So we have to not be heedless. So this saving from hellfire, or saving from on the day of judgment by intercession, will apply for the Shia, but it shouldn't make us heedless. And it is only for a specific group of people who are believers, who go to afterlife and may have committed some sins in this life. He says, hence this verse mentioned above has been explained in various ways. The verse about killing a believer. He says, one possible explanation is that one becomes eligible for eternal punishment only if he murders the believer because of his belief. This is one explanation, that killing someone because of their belief. If such is the case, then the killer is indeed liable for that punishment. For he considered that murdering a mu'min, killing a believer, is halal, whereas this is definitely haram. And to consider the murder of a believer, haram is an article of faith. It's a necessity of religion that we cannot say killing a mu'min is permissible. So he says the one who does not have this belief is kafir, because he's rejecting one of the principles of the faith, one of the essential beliefs in Islam. Such as if someone says that I don't believe salat is wajib at all. This would put them outside of the faith because they are rejecting one of the essentials of the religion. He's saying that one of the essentials of the religion is to consider murdering a believer as haram. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said on the farewell pilgrimage, "O people, it's not permitted to kill the Muslims. Similarly, to appropriate their property, to take their things, is not allowed. So do not be unjust upon yourselves and do not revert to disbelief after my death." So the Prophet is saying that, the blood of a Muslim is sacred. The property of a Muslim is sacred. We also have other narrations say the blood, the property, and the honor of a mu'min is sacred. That we shouldn't violate these things. As we saw in the other narration, to disrespect someone, to insult them publicly, will remove the faith from the person. So we see that the honor of a believer is sacred. We have other narrations that say the honor of a believer is sacred, similar to the sacredness of Holy Kaaba. So we have to remember blood, property, honor, sacred things of a Muslim. We should never violate these things. He says another explanation of the aforementioned hadith is that abide in hellfire denotes being under punishment for a very long time. It does not mean that the sinner will be there forever, involved in eternal chastisement. but that they will go to hellfire for this action, but for a certain amount of time. Allah knows best. In Surah 5, ayat 32, it says, whoever slays a soul, unless it be for manslaughter or for mischief in the land, is as though he slew all men. And whoever keeps it alive, it is though as he has kept alive all mankind. So this verse shows the importance of the value placed on life. It's not something that's very insignificant, that if someone kills someone, it's no big deal, but it is as if you were killed whole of mankind. Also, saving the life is like saving all of mankind. The author says, all the believers are sons of Adam, the brothers to one another. When we look at it this way, we see that, we would not want to kill someone related to us. At least we shouldn't want to. Even no matter how much they get on our nerves, we still wouldn't consider killing them. And we look at people in relation to us as closer to us. I'll give you an example. Okay, something happened in the next city. You don't know them. And maybe someone has got abducted, for example, a child. We don't know them. We say, this is terrible. I cannot believe this has happened and such and such. We feel bad about it. And then, a little bit later, we don't think about it anymore. Now, let's say that person, that thing happened in our town. It's in our neighborhood. We say, oh, wow, this happened in my neighborhood. It's, even greater to us because it's so close, it gets closer. Then we say, let's say that person that got abducted, that child was someone that we knew and their family. Say, wow, did you hear, like our friend or someone we know, our neighbors, that happened to them? It's even more. Then we say, okay, this happened to my my niece or nephew. It's even stronger. Then if it happened to your own family, that's your own kids, now the bala, none of this ever happened, but it even gets stronger. You're like, it's happened to me. It impacts you more. So he's saying it in this way: the closer we view it, the more emphasis or seriousness we place on the event. So when he says all the believers are sons of Adam, they are brothers to one another. When we look at it in this way, we look at them and we, instead of just general people, we say these are our brothers in humanity, our sisters in humanity. We're all sons of Adam. We are all connected. We're all servants of Allah or creatures of Allah. It makes it even more so that we would not want to hurt them. One who kills another person perpetrates a great evil and instigates a feeling of malice, revenge, and hatred among people. Is when the murder happens, the other side wants to retaliate, and it creates big feuds amongst tribes in that time, and also today it is happening still. Someone kills someone, the other family wants revenge, and the cousins and the nephews and all these people, they say, oh, we're going to get the other family for what they did to us. And it causes a lot of problems, a lot of hatred in society. The next part, he says about suicide. Says, Allah says, and do not kill ourselves. Surely Allah is merciful to you, and whoever does this aggressively and unjustly, we will soon cast him into the fire. This is easy for Allah. Surah 4, ayat 29 and 30. So Allah prohibits the believers from suicide, even in the times of turmoil. Most people who do this is unfortunately is happening a lot. I just heard from another community that I used to frequent a lot before all of this pandemic that one of the young girls, maybe 14 years old, committed suicide. And also during pandemic here in my city, one of the girls committed suicide. And Michigan is happening too. I'm hearing about a lot of places. It's very unfortunate. Most people who do this, they're in need of some serious help from other people. and they feel neglected, they feel hopeless. And we as a community, we need to watch out for these signs of suicide. We need to learn what they are, watch out for them. We should help people by being supportive, letting them know that we're there for them, that their life matters, that we care about them, sincerely check on them. We should try to direct them, to seek professional help, because we're not really qualified to do this, where certain people are qualified and have studied and know the techniques of dealing with this situation, because it's very fragile and it's very delicate situation. So we have to point them to those people who are skilled in that area. And we should never make them feel inadequate or that they have weak faith, because they're already in a fragile state that they're giving up. And then you tell them, a lot of people say, you don't have faith. Your faith is weak. You need to do more of this and more of that and this and that. It puts more pressure on them. And, we have to be careful what we say, because what our words could push them over the edge, even though we mean good, but we need to know how to deal with it. And if we don't know how to deal with it, just let them know that you're there for them and direct them to the person that can help them. The next part is about enlivening the people. He says, and whoever keeps it alive, it is though he has kept all mankind alive. That's Surah 5, ayat 32. Talking about whoever saves the life of a person. He says, if one saves the life of a protected soul whose killing has been prohibited by religion, be it by forgiving them, not avenging or protecting him, it is as if he has given life to the whole of humanity. By saving one person, he has in sense saved humanity. By not avenging or forgiving, we see that, for example, the murderer, he goes to that tribe. The tribe has the right to avenge and life for life, but it's better to forgive the person. So the tribe says, I forgive him, and I will not avenge him in that way. Then he has saved the life of that person by not avenging. It's very hard to do, but it's the better way to do. It says, murder is the worst sin in the eyes of Allah, and severe punishment has been prescribed for a killer. The opposite of this is saving the life of a person is accordingly regarded as the greatest form of worship. So we see here the opposites. One is killing one person is like killing all of humanity, and saving one person is like saving all of humanity. It shows the importance of life. He says the following tradition is indicative of the fact that murder is a great sin. We see that some sins, like we mentioned in the last chapter, they will take you out of the fold of Islam until you repent for those sins and you make amends for those sins. We have narration from Imam Rida alayhi salam that he says a murderer is without faith in the moment he kills a respected soul. So he may have been a believer, but then he did that action, and while he is doing that action, the faith has left him in that action. Also, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, at the time of his death, the murderer is told, die however you like, die as a Jew, die as a Christian, die as a other religion. So we see that they will die the death of a non-Muslim. In this, they will die out of the fold of Islam. The person who has killed the believer intentionally. There are many cases where someone kills someone else unintentionally. Their intention was not to do that, but some accident happened and the person died. For example, they're driving a car and they hit someone and the other person died. They did not intend to kill that person with malice or with evil. I even know someone growing up that was fighting with their best friend. They were fighting, but he didn't want to kill him, but they were fighting. And he hit him in the chest so hard that it stopped his heart, and the guy passed away. So we see his intention was not to kill the person. Um, Murder, when it comes down to these things, have to look at intentions. What is the reason behind it? Because it's not that simple all the time. They have to go looking to see, why did this happen. So this is why we see in the verse is the person who killed the believer intentionally. Another narration says a believer is free in the vast expanse of his belief until he colors his hands with the blood of a mu'min. The Imam further says, one who kills a believer intentionally is deprived of tawfiq, of repentance. So we see that these people who murder believers intentionally, there's big punishments and repercussions for this sin. Another narration, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi was told that a Muslim had been killed and his body was lying on the street. When the Prophet and the Sahaba, they reached there, they reached the site of that murder. The Prophet asked, who the killer was. So the people said, we don't know. So the Prophet was very surprised. He said, a person is killed amongst all the Muslims and no one knows who did it. He says, by the Almighty who appointed me with prophethood, if all the creatures of the heavens and the earth participate in the murder of a Muslim and they are happy about this, then Allah would surely involve them in punishment and send them all to hellfire. So the lesson is from this, it shows that there's no difference between the person who kills and the person who cooperates and helps them. Imam Bakr alayhi salam said, on the day of judgment, a person would be presented before Allah. He will be having a streak of blood on his face, and he will say, by Allah, I haven't killed anyone, nor have I helped anyone kill anyone. I wasn't an accomplice in a murder. Allah will say, yes, but one day you spoke about a believer, and your words caused him to be killed. Hence, you are responsible for that murder. They instigated the murder of that person. We see Imam Rida alayhi salam said, if someone is killed in the east and the one who killed in the west is pleased, then he is a partner in this murder. They are joined together. So even the person is in another land and they have nothing to do with it and they didn't commit anything, they are the partner in that murder. We see that, we say that Yazid, la'natullah alayh, killed Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but Yazid was not there, but Yazid ordered that. So we say he is the killer of Imam Hussein. So we see that when someone is happy over the death of another person, that he is a partner in that thing. So we have to, be careful in these things. It says abortion is haram. This next part, we're talking in the chapter of murder. He said it's haram to abort an unborn child. Like in the case of a murder, the diyah or the blood money has to be paid in this case too. There's a lot of ahkam dealing with these situations, which we're not going to get into because it's a different subject matter. We're just talking about the sin of it in itself. But he said there's no difference between a fetus and a full-grown man, even if the killers are its own parents. If a woman takes medicine that causes abortion, she will be liable for the punishment of that abortion. We see that the person, when we go to fiqh jurisprudence, it's the person who performs the abortion. They are the one who is liable to pay the kafara, the expiation, which we find in the books of jurisprudence. So it's the person, if, for example, the mother does that to herself somehow, she is responsible for that, or for doing the kafara, or the person who did the abortion, the doctor, for example, it is on whoever has administered this. Said the penalty for killing a protected soul is 1,000 mithqal of gold. And when we look into the book of fiqh, there's a small book called the Islamic Laws of Expiation, a booklet from Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani that talks about all of these things and question, answer, and different expiations for many different things, for fasting, for murder, for abortion, so on and so forth. But when we look in those books, it's different expiation for different stages during that time. It's like week 1 is this, week 2 it is this amount, week 3 is this amount, for example. So those are in the books of fiqh. He said, it's evident from the foregoing discussion that human life is considered sacred by the Islamic way. Nothing has been given so much importance like this protected soul, the life of a person. And there are some exceptions which are in extreme circumstances that permit abortion in the cases where the soul hasn't entered the fetus yet. For these exceptions, that person has to talk to their marja and reach out to them. So when we come to American politics, for example, one side is totally against abortion altogether, no exceptions. Then the other side is like, whatever, you can do whatever you want with abortion, doesn't care. It's totally, all exceptions are good. We are neither side. There's somewhere in the middle. We are against abortion, but in certain extreme circumstances, then it is permitted. For example, the protecting the life of the mother and other extreme medical circumstances, which the people have to, consult with their marja taqlid. He says about repenting for murder. By the way of repentance, a person who has committed a willful murder should surrender himself to the heir of the murdered person. The successors of the murdered person have a choice of either avenging the death or accepting the blood money. That is, they can forgive him or kill him in retribution. He said, if the murder is forgiven, then 3 things become wajib on him if he is forgiven. He must do all of these kafara, not choose between one or the other one. The first one is freeing a slave. Second is feeding 60 poor people. The third one is fasting for 60 days consecutive. And he says, if freeing a slave is not allowed by the law, the other 2 penalties should be fulfilled. Because this is not relevant in our time. We don't have any slaves to free. But this was encouraging the people, showing them that the first thing they should do is free a slave. But this is not relevant, so we go to the other 2. If a person is forgiven for murder, they have to do these things. They have to feed 60 poor people and fast for 60 days if the family forgives them. Even in the case of accidental murder, the heirs of the victim are to be paid the blood money, but they should forgive the killer if it was accident. Apart from this, he says the 3 penalties should be imposed. Even in accidental murder, he still should do these. He has to do these 3 kafara: freeing slave, feeding 60 poor people, fasting for 60 days. Then he says, similarly, cutting off a part of someone's body is also a greater sin. Not killing them, but cutting off their hand, for example, or their foot or something like this, intentionally. He said those who intend to study this subject in detail are requested to refer to the books of fiqh. So we see that from this, there are many punishments and many requirements for these things which are studied in books of hudud, or the Islamic punishments and the expiations, the books of kafara and diya, blood money. But from what we get from this chapter is that the life of a person is very important and very respected, and that we should not, kill a believer intentionally. And the punishment for murder is so great that it takes the faith of a person, because it's easy for a person to kill someone if they get angry and they have a gun. It's very easy. It just takes 1 second and they can kill someone very easily in a fit of rage. They could be angry at someone and just bang, and it's over. Just took 1 second. Now their whole life is ruined. They have messed up their dunya and their akhirah. They're either going to get avenged by the other family, or they go to prison for the rest of their life. They they have a lot of consequences for these things. I mentioned before, I knew someone who he was from New York. He wasn't a Muslim, but he was telling me about he killed two of his friends. They were gambling, and the person was like, "I took all your money from you, and now you have nothing," and was gloating over it. He just pulled the gun and bang, killed the guy because he was angry. Now he has to spend the rest of his life in the prison because of some small mistake, is some small lapse of judgment. Like it's something that happened. It's a great, huge sin, but it just took like this. And that's all it took. One split second, and ruined his life. As we see that Imam Ali alayhi salam says that the person, it says one moment's pleasure can result in a lifetime of regret. So that's how this is. Murder is the same way. May make the person feel good. They were arguing with them, and I'm tired of you, and just bang and just kill them. Or they're, and then they have to suffer for the rest of their life. Many of these people cannot sleep good at night. They are haunted by these things that they have done. All of these things. They get life in prison. They have to always look over their shoulder. They have to go on the day of judgment with the blood of people on their hands, that they have killed someone. It's very serious. It reminds me of one of the narrations. It was very interesting. We'll end with this, inshallah. He said that one of the people came to the Imam, and he had a dream, came to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He saw those two usurpers, of the government. Anyway, he saw these two, and he said, "I am seeing a bird, and they're coming to those two, and they're putting blood on them," And he said that I thought, maybe it made him kind of like turn his way from them. And the Imam said that no, it's not. It's not what you think it is. It is the fact that all the bloodshed that is caused in humanity from their time until now, every wrongdoing that is happening is because of them, because of those two. That they are putting, someone is killed unjustly, this bird is taking the blood and putting it on them, so that they will be raised on day of judgment with all of the bloodshed of humanity because of them. Because if they did not do what they did and take the government away from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, then none of these things would have happened. All of the corruption, all of the bad things in life, every murder, every wrongdoing, all of these things that we can think of, it is because of this action in Saqifa. All of these will be taken to them, and we see from the ayat is saying like as if you have what they have done, it has affected all of humanity. So they will be raised with these things. So we see from this that is very serious, and inshallah we never have to deal with this. And whenever we get angry and we think about it, we have to remember all of these things. So it's not worth it. Okay, we'll end here, inshallah. We finished this chapter. This chapter was pretty short, and the next chapter we'll talk about the disobedience to parents. So everyone make sure they bring their children for next week, inshallah, the next class. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Now, what about announcement?